and think about what were you looking to get out of Toastmasters. I'll give you a few seconds because I realize some of you may have to think back a bit farther than others. Now let's go over to the present. What have you actually gotten out of Toastmasters? How similar or different was it from what you were originally expecting? I know for me, if you go back to when I originally joined Toastmasters, at the time I was just some recently out of grad school engineer looking for a job, and I was just looking to improve my presentation skills. At that time, I would have been just fine to just work the program. Well, back then this was pre-Pathway, so just work the manuals and do it within my club, continue to excel that way. Let's flash forward 14 years. I think we can safely assume that I've done just a little more than that. So what changed? What was it that prompted me to reach so much higher? If I look back, it really came down to knowing the opportunities available to me as a Toastmaster and fully taking advantage of it. And that's what this session tonight will be focusing on. What are these opportunities? And better yet, what's in it for you when it comes to these opportunities? I know one example of these opportunities are the formal leadership positions, especially at the district level. Last month, we were privileged to have our incoming international president, Margaret Page, talk to us about stepping up to those leadership positions. I won't encroach on her territory, but if you haven't checked out that presentation, it's right now on our district YouTube page. I highly recommend you listen to it. Today's presentation will focus on other types of opportunities, ones that are in addition to these formal leadership positions. They could be opportunities for someone who wants to help, but aren't quite ready to step up to that formal leadership position yet. Or they could be the opportunities for someone who's already held those leadership positions, and they want to let other people hold it, but they still want to stay involved. Or even better, maybe they're just for people who simply want to improve their skills, not just within Toastmasters, but outside. And we're talking about those opportunities. And those opportunities, as Chick mentioned in my title, are the 3 C's. Essentially, there are 3 opportunities starting with a letter C, and we're going to discuss all 3 of them this evening. So that brings us to the first C, which would be district committees. Now, if you look at how a district runs, you'll notice that you'll see a lot of the same key figures. You'll see Chick at a lot of events, see some other people, Hazel, Tabitha, Tina, they're showing up at a lot of these events. It may, upon initial glance, this may seem like the 90s TV show Saved by the Bell, where it's essentially the same 6 kids who are doing everything at that school. But in reality, that's not the case, because we have people who are either working behind the scenes or they're working special projects to help out the district leaders. Just to name a few. We recently had our finances audited by the audit committee. I'm sure Hazel appreciates the audit committee doing their job. And if you look a couple months down the road, we have a spring conference. And I'm pretty sure Shirley's glad she really shouldn't have that on her plate. And our district's been pretty good about letting a whole team take care of that. And if you look even farther, prior to me serving as a region advisor, I was regularly asked to serve as the club alignment chair, which means basically placing all of our clubs in divisions and areas, which means if you don't like where you're positioned, it was probably my fault. And a lot of these positions and a lot of these roles in committees, they take extra work. And so the question is, why would somebody want to participate in these committees? I have my thoughts, but let's hear some of yours, if you wouldn't mind just sharing. What do you think people would what benefits do people get out of these committees? If you wouldn't mind putting it in the chat. Hey, Tabitha says fulfilling educational requirements. Good point, especially depending on what it is. Tina says learn something new. Tabitha said another one, creating networks. Hey, Mike says meeting district leaders. I'm also hearing Santi saying networking. And those are all correct answers. Hazel says getting teamwork. Joy says networking and learning. Aisha, improve human resource management. Good point, especially if you're in human resources. So essentially, all of you are hitting on benefits to serving on these committees. A lot of you mentioned this is a chance to meet people. And Mike especially said district leaders, because in these committees, we have people going from all across the district taking part. So in essence, you're meeting with people whom you wouldn't normally interact with if you just stay within your club. And Hazel says teamwork, because what else in the real world? If you look at the real world, we work in teams a lot these days, and this is another way to get that in. And I also hear creating networks quite a bit. Because again, if you're looking to advance in your career, knowing people in other areas are beneficial. And as I stated earlier, those are all good reasons to help out with these committees. But let's focus on something that, and I know Aisha is alluding to this a little bit about human resource management, because in some of these committees, depending on what you're doing, you are very likely doing something that may help you in your career. For instance, if you're in human resource basically say if you're in human resources, chances are something on these teams is going to apply to your job. And let's also take a look at some of the other examples I mentioned earlier. The audit committee, hey, if you're already an auditor or you're in finance, that's some more practice. Go over to the conference, that's event planning. And even little parts of the conference too, whether it's hosting the conference or organizing it, chances are there's something that's going to apply to your career. And so that's a big thing for on the committee side. Sure, you're doing a little activity for this nonprofit organization, but chances are the skills you are picking up will help you in your beyond Toastmasters. Now let's go a little more in depth into the example I'm most familiar with, and it's being on the alignment committee. And as I said, it's a matter of taking all the clubs in our district and just putting them in the proper areas and divisions. And I look at this like a little project because I'm getting this overall goal. We need to have an alignment that meets the Toastmasters International regulations. And the goal is to make sure every club is in a division or area that will allow them to succeed the most. So that's why we have all of this back and forth going. And it can be a thankless task. I know in the past we've had trouble getting a chair because a lot of people don't like to do those kinds of things. But I was called on partly because my brain is wired for something like this. Because and that's another benefit to some of these committees. You could discover a passion that you've had. Because let's go back at my history. Some confessions, I don't think I've told a whole lot of people this, but when I was a kid, I was obsessed with staring at maps. And that eventually went on as I was getting older. Whenever I was getting in a mall, I was always thinking, okay, what's the layout? And especially airport terminals, that was an even bigger one for me, and trying to recreate airport terminals and figure out, okay, if I were to create this, what's going on? So essentially, ever since I was a kid, I've always had a fascination with putting things together. So serving as an alignment chair went right into that old passion I've had since my early years. So again, that was something that I can help fuel it, which is why I've always volunteered for it every time I was eligible, because it's something that I like doing. And not only that, I had this project, I had this goal, didn't get a whole lot of specific instructions as to how to get there. It was up to my discretion. So it's almost like trying to complete a little project. Well, let's take a look at what I do for a living. I work as a chemical process engineer where we do a lot of project works for different clients. So again, we have the project, we have the goal, we have objectives, and as the lead, I have to decide the direction to take and how to make sure the project gets delivered on time and on spec. So again, that's an example of how I have a project here in Toastmasters. Sure, it's a slightly different material. We're talking clubs and not, say, pumps or relief valves, but the same concept. I have a project I have to take from start to finish, and I get for practice in leading a project. So again, that's an example of how these committees can help you in your profession. So that's something to consider when these committee opportunities come up. How can this help you down the road? So again, let's review what's in it for you when it comes to these committees. And I will go ahead and just show you the screen here. So what's in it for you? And just to let you know, I will give you a copy of these slides at the end of this presentation. But essentially, what's in it for you? For when you serve on a committee, you already talked about this already, it's meeting people, learning new skills. As I talked before about reinforcing passions and real world applications. And then as Tabitha said, some of these, depending on what it is, could qualify for a Pathways project. And that's always a good thing, trying to advance through your educational levels. So that's the first C, participating on district committees. So that brings us to C number 2. And you've been seeing plenty of this lately. It would be speech contests. Some of your clubs have already had it. Many of them have them coming up. And speech contests can be a bit of an intimidating endeavor at first because it's different, because sure, they have the same elements of our meeting, but there are differences as well. And I know that there are clubs that struggle in getting people to participate in these speech contests. So let's go ahead again. I'm going to go ahead and just get your thoughts on this. So again, in the chat, why do you think people are a bit hesitant to take part in speech contests? I know this is not intended to be an intentional
fear of having someone hear them make a mistake.
Yeah, actually, that's, yes, as Carolyn said, fear of a mistake. Hazel says afraid of losing. Samantha tell me just fear of competition. Loveness think they are not good enough speakers. I will definitely tell you a little bit more about that afterwards. Tina agrees with Aisha. Loveness says they think someone else will do it. Oh, and again, a lot of people are saying they don't think they're good enough. Believe it or not, I was once one of those people who didn't think I was good enough. And yes, and Mike says they don't get the encouragement either. Because in fact, I'll share from my personal history. The first time I heard of speech contests, I thought, oh, that's just for professional speakers. I'm never going to be that level. Well, those who know me know that's not exactly true. I think I've won just a few. Okay, so I've won at the district level 4 times. So again, what happened? What took me from not good enough to compete to the person people didn't want to compete against? And again, it was a matter of just understanding what the speech contests were all about. And as multiple people said, people don't think they're good enough to compete, but honestly, do you really have to be all that good to compete in the first place? Shake is shaking his head, and I agree. It's not a matter of being good already, but it's a matter of pushing yourself and trying to get better or even get good. Because really, anybody who wants to see how they stack up against other people, competition's for you. And in fact, it's not just me who's touting the benefits of competition. Several years ago, a past international president, Dilip Abhisekara, who was also a past third place finisher in the World Championship of Public Speaking, he published a free article that I'm also going to give you at the end of this presentation. But Dilip said there were 4 benefits to participating in speech contests. Yeah, and I know a lot of your clubs either have club or even area contests coming up, so if you're still on the fences on whether to compete, consider these 4 things in mind. And if your club has already held their contest, perhaps it's something to consider for the future. So what are these 4 benefits that Dilip brings up? Well, the first one would be that when you compete, it accelerates your growth. Because if you think about the concept of competition, you're going against other people and you don't want to look bad. So in the preparation, you're going to want to prepare and make sure that you put on your best. And so yes, there's that whole pressure of wanting to improve just so you're up to the level of the other contestants. And that in a way that forces you to try to grow faster because again, accelerate, basically you have a shorter deadline, you have this level you're trying to reach, you're going to work a lot harder. And I know in all the years I've competed, that was a way I've accelerated my development because it forced me to try to get as good as I can, as fast as I can. So it's something that can help accelerate your development. So number 2 is it gives you a realistic appraisal of your skills. Because when the judges go out there, they're just, or at least they're supposed to judge on who's the best that day. And yeah, they can't say, they can't look ahead and say, okay, if we really coach them up, this person will be better. Or you can't say, oh, this person's always good, let's give it to them again. No. It's always, or it should be, who's the best that particular day. So you will get to see exactly where you stood up that particular day. And it can be for positive or negative. Maybe the contest comes and you realize you're better than you think you are. Or maybe it comes and you realize, okay, maybe you aren't as great as you think. Well, either way, you get to know for sure exactly where you stack up. And furthermore, you can also look at the other contestants and decide, okay, what can I learn from them? Sure, you want to look at the winner, but don't just look at the winner as well. So maybe there's a speech that didn't place, but there was one particular thing that the participant did so great. Granted, the rest of the speech didn't measure up, but maybe there's that one thing you can learn. And when it's all out there in front of you, you get to see it and you can learn from it and decide, okay, what can I implement? So again, that's the second reason Dilip gives, the second benefit, that you get a realistic appraisal of where you are. Now let's go up to his third one. And his third benefit is you discover the power of spoken word. Because in the process of trying to get better, you're generally, or at least the way it should work, is you're going out, you're editing, and you're finding better ways to say things and better ways to perform. And I know this from my experience as a competitor, I rarely get it all right the first time. Because sure, you get to see the final versions of my speeches when I compete, but chances are that's probably really version 10 or 12. And the speeches that make it to district, I think I've gone over those at least 50 times, and I've probably changed them at least 3 or 4 times, major changes. And if you're looking at minor, probably more than 15 or 16. Because I'm always looking and trying to find, okay, what's the best way to say this? But when you find it, it can be highly empowering. And something I've experienced on my own, that here you are pouring over this one passion and suddenly, hey, you hear something and you find the right way to do it. And when you do it, you want more of it. So again, it shows you how to master the spoken word. And that brings up Dileep's fourth benefit, and I think it's the best one of all. You take skills that you can apply in your everyday lives. Because as Dileep says, your growth doesn't stop at the contest, and nor do the results really validate all the work you put into it or not. Because whether you win or lose, chances are you put in the work to improve yourself, and you're going to be better when you step back out into the real world. And I know we talk about losing a contest, and some people say they are afraid of losing, but just because you lose a contest, did you really lose? Because sure, you may have lost on the judge's scorecard, but what about all the skills you gained? Sure, even if you didn't win, all the skills you gained just to get to that point, do those go away because you lost? In fact, I would counter the opposite. Sometimes losing can be the best thing for you because it can motivate you to even greater heights, because now you know where you fell short and you can work on it. And if I look back at my history, I would actually point to a contest that I lost that ended up being a jumpstart of so many other things I ended up accomplishing in Toastmasters. Let's go back 10 years ago to the 2011 International Speech Contest. That was the same year I did what Jeff Harris likes to call the cello speech. It was a speech I decided to write around my cello playing, and I started and ended the speech by playing the cello. I had made it up to the division level, won the club in the area, but I didn't place at the division. So I thought that was the end of it. A couple of weeks later, I attended the district contest. And that's when I find out there was an opening in our division. Oh, and by the way, the division governor failed to notify that there was an opening, so I didn't bring the cello with me. About 3 hours before the district international speech contest is to start, I'm pulled aside and asked, hey, we really do have an opening. Would you like to jump in? So here I am. I haven't practiced my speech in about 2 or 3 weeks. Oh, and by the way, the cello that I used, I don't have it. Would you consider that to be a scary thing? Hey, I could certainly I was thinking, oh man, do I really want to put myself out there? But ultimately, the thought that came into my head, and I actually have an old GSU member, Frank Parks, to thank to help me drill this thought into my head. But I just thought of what would Frank Parks do? And he made me realize that, look, you're getting a speaking opportunity. You don't know when you're going to get another opportunity like this. Make this work. So I jumped in. I decided, yes, I will do it. So now I actually had to try to rewrite the beginning and end of my speech, while also trying to recall the speech I last gave 2 weeks ago. One thing I had going for me is my speech was largely autobiographical, so that helped a little bit because I lived it, but still. Here I was trying to recall it on the spot. I'm pretty sure my competition had been practicing over and over, and here I am trying to recall on the spot. So the contest comes, and I actually performed that speech the best I did the whole season, even with the revised intro and closing. Now, ultimately, I didn't win, although if I later knew the two people who, well, at least 2 people finished ahead of me would do, I guess I feel a little better about it because I lost to 2 people who ended up coming 1 spot away from getting to the World Championship of Public Speaking. I know Teresa Nchukwu was one. She actually came in second at the semifinals that year. And then Daryl Sims would come in second in the semifinals several years later. But the bottom line is, that was a contest I lost. Yet, I grew so much from it because now I had the experience of doing something that was absolutely terrifying. Trying to come in, call up with a speech at the last minute on short notice. Oh, and by the way, it's only a spot to the World Championship semifinals. And as Loveness just said, even when you lose, you win. And now suddenly, now that I went ahead and came in at the last on short notice, do you think I ever backed out of a speech slot at the club meeting again after that? Okay, unless I was sick or had something come up at the last minute, I didn't back out. And furthermore, I took even another step. If I can do something that scary, suddenly area governor / director didn't feel so scary anymore. And then I kept going up the tree. Oh, district trio? Hey, I had that 2011 contest. I think I can handle this. So and even the region advisor position said, oh, yeah, I've got 5 different regions. Yeah, I can do this. So again, this is all because of a contest that I lost. And if I didn't enter that, and if I didn't stay yes, would I have had the courage to really step forth and do everything? Well, I can't say yes, I can't say no. But I do know because I did it, that's what motivated me to reach even higher. So that's, I'd say, would be one of the biggest benefits of stepping forward. It puts you in situations where you will try to do terrifying things, but when you do it, your confidence grows and you're inspired to do even higher. So again, I'll show you what the Leaps 4 benefits are. And as I said, I will be showing this to you at the end of the presentation. So participating in contests can help you accelerate your growth, gives you a realistic appraisal of your skills, allows you to discover the power of the spoken word, and gives you lessons you can apply in everyday life. So even after these reasons, maybe it's a little too late for you to jump in, or maybe you still think you're not ready to compete. But there's still opportunities for you to learn when you help out with contests, because all of these contests have other roles where help is needed. Because on the helping out side, there are judges that because we need to have winners determined, judges that can help you look at it effectively. And not just that, all these other functionary rules are needed as well. We need people to keep time, people to make sure people to keep order, like a sergeant at arms, and people to count votes. And when you take these roles, it's also a learning experience because you get to learn more about contests themselves. For instance, if you're looking to learn more about how a contest runs, I would actually recommend that you take the vote counter role. Because if you do that, you get to see the inner workings of a contest and see what happens on the inside. Because whenever I'm trying to fulfill rules for a contest, I intentionally look for newer members for the vote counter role. And every time, or almost every time, I have one of the vote counters say, oh, so this is what goes on. I've learned so much. So helping out with these contests can allow you to learn more about contests themselves. And not only that, you're also going to get an appreciation because if you look at the contest rules, there's a common theme running through them. And you see the rules are set up so that each contest is run fairly and as much bias is eliminated as possible. So everything in the contest is geared towards just trying to eliminate bias. So you get experience on how to run a contest fairly. And then there are other roles as well. There's other skills you can learn. For instance, if you're the contest chair, there's a part about interviewing contestants, which I'm finding out is a skill. There's also hosting that can be a part of it, and administrating rules. So again, these are all things you can learn on the contest functionary side. So just to show you a couple of benefits to participating on the organizational side. Again, it's a different type of experience than what you would see in the club, and you learn how to run an event fairly. and with all the stakes that go on with the contest, it gives you practice in performing under pressure. And depending on what role you take, you can develop new skills. So that's what's in it for you when it comes to organizing contests. That brings us to the third C, and that would be club building opportunities, which I believe would probably be the biggest growth opportunities we have within Toastmasters. And again, this was another thing earlier in my Toastmasters career. It intimidated me at first because as I was going up, I didn't know how to start a club, and I was under the impression that starting a club was just a complicated endeavor that only a few people with specialized knowledge could do. And from my understanding, I thought, oh, this is just a sales pitch, and I'm just not a natural salesperson. Strike 1 and 2. In reality, if you look at the process of starting a club, it really isn't as complicated as it sounds. Sure, there can be complications coming up, but the general process itself is pretty straightforward. And it's not just people with specialized skills. In reality, all of us can play a role in starting clubs. I'm pretty sure Vanessa, our club growth director, would be pretty happy I'm telling you this, but I believe it's true. No matter where we are in the club building process, you can contribute. So let's show you a little bit more about what exactly goes on in building a club. So here's a little graphic that shows a 6-step process to building a club. The first one would be to identify leads and prospects for the club. So basically this would be, okay, so what would be a need area? And District 68 does have quite a few need areas. Because if you take a look at the number of clubs we have now and compare it to comparable geographies, we have some opportunities to grow. In fact, if you take a look at Division A, which essentially covers everything to the west of Baton Rouge, and just look at that big area, I actually have one district that I support, District 54. This is a district that's basically it covers northern Illinois, but doesn't take the Chicago area. If you look at that area geographically, and you look at Division A, they're pretty similar in terms of land area. And not only that, in terms of population, District 54 does not have a single metro area more than 400,000 people. So basically, this is almost like centering a district around Beaumont and Shreveport. Yet, they have almost 60 clubs just covering that limited area with not that many major metro areas. So we've got an opportunity to grow some clubs. So the need is certainly there. But the first step is to identify those leads. And once you've identified, you'll go over to the right, the contact and qualify. So again, this is contacting the lead itself, making sure that they are interested. This is something of interest to them. And the key here is to get in touch with someone who can make a decision on moving that club forward. Could be an HR person if you're doing this within a company, or if this is a community club, just find a ringleader. But again, it's to make sure that we really do have a legitimate interest. So we've identified the need for a club, and we've qualified that, yes, this really is a viable option. Let's go to this third square, which is the present. Now, this is where some more experienced people come in. We usually have district leaders coordinate this. The present is usually where we have what is known as a demo meeting. And that's where we have some experienced Toastmasters show this new group what a Toastmasters meeting is like. And this demo meeting usually also is a chance to address questions and concerns about moving the group forward. Now, once you get the demo meeting, you should have at least 20 people in place, and probably more, because it does take 20 people to charter a new club. And chances are, all the people you get there, you're probably not going to get 100% participation. So that's why it's good to have at least perhaps 35 to 40 people, potential prospects, when you start getting to the demo meeting stage. So that way, say half of them get accepted and you're still in good shape. So again, you're presenting and addressing questions and concerns. So once you have the members, there are some payments the group needs to make and all the paperwork's filled out. That's when you charter. Yay! But it doesn't end there. There's also the follow-up stage where we continue to meet with the club, make sure they're doing well, getting off to a good start, and making sure they're doing good. They're forming good habits. And we usually have people at these last two steps to help that go a little bit more smoothly. So I said that you could actually participate at any single part of this club building cycle. And just to show you, here are some ways you can do that. So let's go to the first step when I talked about finding and qualifying leads. This is something that, since you're out there in the community, you would know firsthand if there was a need. Sure, we have district leaders that also do this as well, but you know your community's best. Is there a company that you think could use a club? Or maybe you're in an underserved area and you know that there's a large group of people who would be interested. And you can help get that going. And in fact, I think I said at the last TLI that one of our neighboring districts to the north, District 43, they've been a successful story so far in that they've started 7 new clubs since July 1st. But out of those 7, for two of them, there was very little involvement on the district side up until the chartering process, which means that for those first step of finding and qualifying leads, that was done by somebody outside of the district leadership team, and the team didn't really come in until the end of the process to close it out. So again, this shows that if you have contacts and you know how to reach the right people, you can help us out with finding and qualifying leads. And another thing you can do is to help coordinate the organization of prospective clubs. So essentially making sure that just keeping tabs, seeing if the members are coming in and helping to answer their questions. Now, once we get to demo meeting, that's also an area where anybody can help out as well, because what we're doing is just doing a smaller scale version of a Toastmasters meeting. So if you've held any role at a Toastmasters meeting, you can show the new prospective members how to do it. Sure, maybe you're a brand new member and only know the all-counter grammarian rules, but that's probably more than what some of the prospective members know. So that's why anybody who would like to check out who would like to see new clubs, they can help with demo meetings. Now, I said earlier, towards the end, there are some rules that the district provides that can help with the support. One would be during the chartering process, and that's a club sponsor that can help with that. And then I mentioned that there was a follow-up where a club mentor gets involved. And those are ways that any of us can be involved. Sure, the district leaders will take part and they'll certainly help with the chartering process, but all of us can help out in any step of the process. So far, I've explained how a club starts from a very high level and how you can get involved. But I'll ask this question. Sure, we're pitching it and I'm saying there's a need, but why would you be interested in new clubs starting up? So what's in it for you? Let's hear some ideas in the chat. Hazel says you can get credit. Oh yes, Hazel and Santi says he can fill DTM requirements. That is true. But what else? Carolyn says sharing the responsibilities. I like Shirley, what she says, the opportunity to help others fulfill growth. So to focus on what's already been shared so far, with Santi and Hazel saying that you can fulfill a DTM requirement, that is true because you have to serve as either a club sponsor or mentor. That is part of the requirement to get your DTM. So you'll have some people who will step forward there. Tabitha says, help the district become distinguished. But what's in it for you there? Oh, and here Santi says, networking, skills, and team collaboration. And Shirley also says, fulfilling growth, because again, those are skills, because if you are working with newer members, you are picking up these skills. So those are skills you can get just by helping out with these new clubs. And let me go ahead and center around what Hazel just said. Think of the opportunities you would have lost if there was no Toastmasters club in your area. Because essentially, if you're creating a new club, you are creating a new opportunity to serve other people. But let's get selfish. You're also creating more speaking roles for yourself. Because the more clubs you have, the more options you have when it comes to places to speak. Especially since a lot of clubs aren't like GSU pre-pandemic, where they're basically packed with speakers. Because in most other clubs, if you can make it to their club meeting and say, hey, could I speak? Most of them will say, sure, there's a spot for you. So by creating more clubs, you basically create more opportunities for yourself. And also, I'm pretty sure many of you have visited other clubs before. Are any two clubs alike? I'm seeing some heads shaking. And yeah, I haven't noticed two clubs being alike either. Point there is every club has a different culture and a different feel. And the more different clubs we have, the more different cultures that are out there. And we're basically giving people more options to find a culture they like. So again, by starting new clubs, we are giving more opportunities to find something that's the right fit for someone else out there, and maybe find it's the right culture for you. So as I said, sure, it helps the district, and that's a great thing, but you can benefit too by giving yourself more skills and get some more speaking slots, and even giving yourself more skills to develop. And I know on my end, I said earlier that a lot of these other positions can help springboard into a formal leadership position. It's the club building opportunities that was the biggest springboard for me to serve as an area governor. If we go back to my year as president of the GSU Baton Rouge Club, we were having a very good year. We were on pace to be President's Distinguished 10 out of 10. Yeah, 20 goals would be very impressive. But we were on pace, and it was towards the end of the year, and quite frankly, I was looking for another challenge. That was when I heard that some new clubs were forming in the Baton Rouge area. And I decided to mentor one of them. This would be one over at Blue Cross Blue Shield. This was a big challenge for me because, sure, here I am going up in the Toastmasters program. I thought I knew my material. Did I know it well enough to teach them? And furthermore, can I generate enough trust so that that I can lead them and trust that I am teaching them the right things? Big challenge for me. And it made me go back and just reinforce what I knew and maybe go over, okay, do I really know what I'm talking about? And this was also a club that took a while to charter, but the good news, it finally did. And when I talked about having a driving force, it certainly helped that Rebecca Arnett was that driving force. But again, that was something that I really had to reinforce my skills. And a bonus was I learned that I really did have a passion for teaching others, and that's why you're listening to me as a region advisor right now. But ultimately, it was that role that told me, hey, there really is something more between that and my context experience, once I had those two things, signing up to be an area governor became a lot easier. But again, it was serving in that role that allowed me to develop these skills and show me that I had this passion I did not realize was in me. And Loveness has an add-on, no better way to learn than to teach. And as I fully agree with that. So to show you some of the benefits to helping start new clubs. And we've talked about a lot of these already, but it's a chance, as Loveness just says, it's a teaching opportunity, brand new group, so it's also an opportunity to meet new people. And I just talked about reinforcing your own skills, but also creating more speaking opportunities and finding the right culture. But hey, if you like recognition, there's a DTM credit that was mentioned earlier. And I'm pretty sure Vanessa wanted me to bring a Blackout Bingo too, because that count, there is a club building square on Blackout Bingo. So when I look back at what's taken me to this point and what's caused me to really reach higher, I can point to my experience with the 3 C's. It would be helping with committees that help me develop skills, and my experience with contests and club building helped me develop even more skills and give me the confidence to reach even higher into the position where I am now. And those were all useful opportunities for me, and I encourage each of you to take advantage of those opportunities as they come up. I know I've covered a lot of material in the last 45 to 50 minutes. I'll stop for a couple minutes and see if there are any questions from the audience. Please feel free to either ask out loud or put in the chat.
Phil, I have a question.
Sure, Shirley, go ahead.
We talk about committees, contests, and club building.
Right.
We talk about growth and what's in it for me. Would you say, how would I put it? Would you say that from each one of these opportunities that you've had, that not only were you able to grow inside Toastmasters, but you were able to take who you were inside Toastmasters outside of the club, the district, and grow yourself at a higher level, maybe on your job, in your homes or community? Would you say how that helped to advance you in those areas?
For sure, because I talked about the confidence to take all of these, to basically take advantage of these higher opportunities within Toastmasters, but outside, it was a little bit more of a subtle change, but the confidence meant I was more likely to speak up when I saw something that was amiss, or if something needed correction. I was a lot more confident in just stepping up, like, hey, we need to fix this. Especially if you look at my job, I do a lot of checking. So even if it's not in a verbal way, I'm definitely a lot more. I'm a lot more about making sure that things are correct and putting my foot down. Now, I do see 2 other. So did that answer your question, Shirley?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. And I do see there are 2 other questions in the chat. Let me get to them. So Tina asks, what advice would I have for someone new to contests to help with their fear? I would tell them, don't focus on the results. Don't focus on the trophy or the winning and losing. Focus on how you will grow in preparing for it, and look at it and just look at the result as just a realistic indication as to where you are, because it may be better or worse than you think, or maybe it's exactly the same. But just think of it more as, okay, this is reality. It is what it is. It's not an indictment on you. It's just your checkpoint, seeing where you are. And Loveness is saying, out of all the 3 C's, which one was the most impactful for me? And it's really a it really is a big toss up because it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg. If you look at the first, and really the contests were the first ones that really helped get the process going. So in a way, if you want to look at it that way, that was the first thing that got the ball rolling for me. But I needed the other C's too, because yeah, the committees helped me discover my passion. The club building opportunities let me know there were higher opportunities. So those were very close in importance, but the contests were the ones that got the ball rolling for me. So those are good questions. Do we have any further ones?
Bill, I don't have a question, but can I just add a little something to what
Go ahead.
your last answer?
Go ahead.
One of the things I'm constantly trying to inspire people to join contests. And I often hear all the things we heard here. I'm not good enough. I'm afraid. I'm too new, et cetera, and et cetera. This is what I ask everybody to remember. The club mission statement is just as important in the contests as it is in the club. We provide a supportive and positive learning experience. When you go to compete, there's nobody there judging, other than the judges are judging the speech, but they're judging the speech. They're not judging you. I'm going to say this to you right now. A very good dear friend of mine and a past district director at a division speech one year. I'd heard her do a speech 4 times before, and it was perfect and it was great. And when she got to the division, something happened right at the beginning of her speech, and she went blank. She stood there in front of everybody, and she could never get it started. She wound up walking off the stage. Nobody there was talking bad about her. Everybody there was going and saying, listen, this could happen to anybody. We know what it's like. That didn't stop her from growing throughout her term in Toastmasters and working all the way through to district director. So just remember, if you're wanting to compete, nobody's judging you. We're all on your side. Nobody's going to boo. Nobody's going to throw tomatoes at you. It's a positive and supportive learning experience. That's it.
Thank you, Chick. Do we have any further questions? And if I remember that, I think the struggle really was real there, if I'm remembering this correctly. Oh, and Aisha says, what are the key areas a contest planner must pay attention to? Thank you for the question, Aisha. Well, and with almost anything, I like to start with the basic concept. So the first thing, and I believe, Aisha, you've competed before. So the first thing I would do is put yourself in the contestant's shoes, because you know how you felt. And just think, what are some things that I can do to help? This is a nerve-wracking experience. What are some things I can do to help the contestant not only be the most comfortable, but things I can do that can allow them to give their best speech possible? So this would be things like, okay, so how do I make sure this contest is as organized as possible? Because one thing that I know, when I was a contestant, a disorganized contest made me more nervous. So these are things like, so I have to make sure I communicate, making sure that everything's set up well, and making sure the timing's just right. And if you've been a contestant before, you do have an advantage because you've been on that other side. So the biggest thing for a contest planner is just making sure that everything is set up properly and just everything's organized well. So by the time the contest comes, that it runs as smoothly as you can, and the contestants have a great experience, because ultimately that's what we want to do. Make sure that their experience is good and they're in a position to perform their best speech possible. I know that was very high level, but that's the way. I do think that's the best way to understand it.
Thank you very much, Phil, for that. I actually really appreciate your response because looking at it in that perspective, I'm so comfortable with it that way than
Cool.
looking at it on the other perspective of, okay, I have to make my role, I have to play my role as an area director.
Oh, right.
But
Yeah.
looking at it in the perspective of helping the community, that works much better for me. And I really appreciate that response. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes. And I think that's the way it should be. These are good questions. And we still have some time for a few more if there are any more out there. Give them a few more seconds just in case someone's typing something.
On you call, yeah, when you were district director,
Yes.
what was your biggest challenge? What kept you awake?
Oh, as a district director / governor, because I was actually the last district governor of District 68. I would say I guess the biggest thing I was trying to do is, because I think my whole theme was making sure I supported all of the members. So it would be things like, okay, here's the approach I'm taking, or here's a decision we've made on, say, the conference or the TLIs. Are people really appreciating what, basically the right reason why we're doing things the way we are? Because some things we did were a little different. For instance, back then we made the TLIs more regional, and some people thought, hey, what are you doing? You're expending all this effort. Well, yes, but I'm trying to reach more people. So basically, sure, I thought what I was doing was, I did what I thought was in the best interest of the district, but was it really? And ultimately even though my year as district governor, we were not distinguished, but the way I saw it, I did what I thought was the best. And in hindsight, oh yeah, I'm actually kind of talking myself to an answer here, Taufik, but in hindsight, it was really the club building that got us. We just weren't aggressive enough early enough. And look, that's like, I probably didn't drive that as much as I could have. And look, I'll take full responsibility for that, but it was what it was. We did what we could, and the hope was we left the district better off. And bottom line is we did what we thought was best. So thanks for the question, Taufik.
Thank you.
So do we have any further questions? I'll give a few more seconds for if anyone's typing something in the chat. But in the meantime, why don't I go ahead? Let me see if I can drop in some. I was going to upload a couple of documents in the chat, and I'm trying to see if I can actually do that. Yeah, I'm trying to see. Okay, I don't only see the saved chat, but there were a couple of documents I was going to send. I'm having a little trouble sending them.
Phil, another question about the C's.
Sure.
The C's, if you look at the C's as a climbing, is it in retrospective or in looking forward to climbing you to the next level of what you aspire to be in Toastmasters? Or is it a thing that you look at what brought you to where you are now? Or there are more C's to climb?
There probably are more C's to climb, honestly, but I'll use this quote from Ed Tate: "You can't connect the dots looking forward." So yeah, you can go where you think you're going, but where is it going to take, and what does this all mean? You really don't know until after you've done it.
Can't know where you're going till you know where you've been.
Right. And again, I seem to have. Yeah, well, I'll find a way. There were 3 documents I was going to send. They were going to be, and I'll find a way to get that to every. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Let me try one more thing. Oh, here we go. All right, so I'm going to do the promised document drop. Yeah, you would think with all of this Zoom experience we've had from the, from this challenging time, you'd think I would know how to operate Zoom by now. But let me go ahead and send you the documents that I was going to, and okay, there. I'm even trying to find. So first off, the slides that I was showing, I am putting those in the chat now. Essentially, the biggest thing I put on there, I have the club building cycle and the what's in it for me. I will also send the article from Dilip Abhiyasekara about competing in speech contests that I've referenced. And finally, I didn't get a chance to reference this during the presentation itself, but should you decide to go out and help start clubs, something you can do, Toastmasters created a benefits chart for a group. You can, if there's a group that has questions about Toastmasters, you can just read off the chart, say, here's what's in it for you. So again, please take all those documents that you wish. And furthermore, there are plenty of opportunities within Toastmasters that can allow you to grow. I've certainly grown through them, and if you take advantage, you can too. Just remember the 3 C's. Remember the committees, remember contests on both sides of it, and the club building opportunities. Take advantage of those. Who knows where you're going to end up. Mr. District Director.